All right, thank you everyone for coming. As I stated before, we will have Art Rooney, our team president, make some opening comments. Then we'll pass it over to Coach Mike McCarthy. At that point in time, after he is done, we'll open it up for questions. Please say your name and affiliation, and my team will get the microphone to you. Art?
All right, good afternoon. Thanks everybody for being with us on this special occasion. It may be irrelevant to some of you, but I like the fact that today is my grandfather's birthday, and he would have loved the fact that we're hiring a guy from Greenfield to be our coach. So, but having said that, him being from Greenfield had little to do with our decision here. It's really great to be able to hire somebody who has such a tremendous winning track record and won everywhere he's been, and so it gives us great confidence to welcome Mike. And so I am happy to introduce Mike McCarthy, the next head coach of the Pittsburgh Steelers. Mike.
All right, here we go. Thank you, Art. I think I thought at least be able to get started. You know, oftentimes coaches and players, you know, you put on new team colors, and it takes a minute to feel comfortable in those new colors. But to be blessed beyond any measure, one day to put on the colors you wore since you brought home. I apologize. Right, I told you not to sit my family down here in front. This is so unfair. When you come home from Mercy Hospital, I do want to thank Art Rooney, Omar Khan, Dan Rooney, and the entire Steelers organization for the trust they placed in me to represent one of the most storied franchises in all of sports. I understand and embrace the responsibility, the privilege, and the weight that comes with this stewardship. This city, this franchise, this fan base means the world to me because Pittsburgh's my world, and it's just awesome to be back here. I do want to thank two men I'm very fortunate to call friends, Mike Tomlin and Bill Cowher. They represented this organization with such class, and I'm honored to follow in their footsteps. They left the proverbial cupboard full, for sure. My family, my loves, my wife Jessica, kids Alex and Danny, Jack, George, Gabby, and Izzy, my parents, Joe and Ellen McCarthy, my sisters, Kelly, Ellen, and Colleen, and the crew that's here. We can finally openly wear our Steelers swag, so let's get it. My heart is full, my focus is singular, and it's time to bring another championship back to this great city. And with that, I just want to make sure that when we do get that trophy, that, you know, the 7th trophy in the case, we'll start that victory parade at 1137 Greenfield Avenue. So with that, Bert.
All right, if you guys want to raise your hand, we'll pass the mics over.
Mike, Jerry Dulac from the Post-Gazette. Did you think and want to get back into coaching? And we've seen other guys take that year off and get back. What did last year or the year off do for you, show you, anything like that?
Well, the year off was awesome. Really family. You know, I had a chance to take a year off in 19, and frankly, I really didn't take the year off. I just, you know, we had a group of coaches, friends mainly, that we really treated it like a season. We started in February, and still today there's projects that, you know, I never really got to in Dallas. So I mean, it was a football deep dive on a lot of things. It was awesome. I loved it, you know, just to do it at that pace and do it with the people that I did, you know, experience that with. But this year was about family. You know, I spent a lot of time with the family through the spring volleyball games, all that stuff. It was, I don't know why I'm so emotional, but great year. I had a great year. So, and then I was able to do some cool things too. You know, I mean, the Pat McAfee show was awesome. Just to see that side of the world, have more respect for you now, Jerry, than I ever have, just because, you know, I see how hard you guys work. But no, it was just a very fulfilling year, and frankly went too fast because, you know, because once football season gets in, really once training camp hits, you know, we all have that clock, you know, so to be able to start, have conversations and watch certain things. I just didn't do as much this past year as I did, you know, back in 19. But it was really cool to, you know, step back and look at the trends. I think our game's so much about trends. I'm just always amazed when you look at a season, whether you're following game management, you're following fundamentals. If you see the ball kicked out at the 1 yard line in one game, and it's amazing, 3 more happen in the next 3 weeks. So I just always have followed the trends because I think our game's about trends, and it is our responsibility as coaches to make sure we're constantly teaching and reinforcing and finding new examples for that. So it was a great year.
Just for media, too, when you're asked a question, raise your hand so they can see in the crowd where you're coming from. Go ahead.
Mike, Tim Benz over here from Trib Live. Question, just a football one for you. I'm not asking this from any other perspective except your own personal preference. In your best case scenario, do you want Aaron Rodgers back as your quarterback next year?
That's nice the way he asked that, right? That was slick. But, I mean, definitely. I mean, I don't see why you wouldn't. But, I think just like anything, knowing Aaron long enough, going through seasons, I think when players, to see Mel Blunt here, I mean, when guys are up at that stage of their career, they need to step away and decompress. I think that's very important. The game is so emotional, what these men commit to and what they put into it. I think that time away is important, and I have spoken to Aaron, and so that's really where we are there. But I was able to sit back and watch the games. I watched most of the Pittsburgh games on TV, and I thought he was a great asset for the team.
Rich Walsh, KDKA-TV. Mike, credentials aside, did you feel like you had to sell yourself in that interview? And was there any answer or story that you told that maybe helped get you the job?
Well,
Share with us?
I think, every time you had a chance to interview, I've always enjoyed the interview process. Frankly, you have, was on 3 this year, had a number in 19, and really didn't have many before that, frankly. I think anytime, coaches and players have a chance to talk football, sit down and cross the table and, have a chance to sit down and talk to Art Rooney, about the game, the history, especially growing up here and being a huge Steeler fan as a kid and understand. I mean, it's a great opportunity. So I'm filibustering here because I'm trying to think of a good story to give you, but I don't think there was one that knocked it out of the park. But no, I just I enjoyed those conversations, and I know this no different than I would think in any industry. You look for fit. I'm in the process of putting together a coaching staff, and there's so many outstanding coaches out there that I respect, but it has to fit together. So I did feel very comfortable, from the moment that I was able to sit down with Art and Omar, and that's a connection. I know where I am in my life and in my career. The GM head coach relationship's critical, and I couldn't be paired with a better guy.
Bo Marchant with College of Pro. Michael, this question's for you.
Yeah. I got him. Yep.
This question's for you. In terms of absent of being a Pittsburgh guy yourself, but when you looked at the roster specifically, what attracted you most to the roster, and what are you happiest with in terms of the roster?
Oh, I mean, I love the roster, and I think it's Omar's turn to talk here, but I think it's a roster that, is fluid. And what I mean by that, the first thing I always look for, I know in my head coaching years, how many players do we have returning on contract? Or we had 52, we had 61, 64, because frankly, I mean, the draft's really important. Veteran free agency is important. But that group of men in these off-season programs, particularly just being older, being in the league, that time you have together, those men will move the needle more, in my opinion, more than anybody else. And it's a great group of men, just based off the feedback that, we all talk to each other. And so I'm really looking forward to moving the needle with those guys. And definitely we'll add through free agency, we'll add through the draft. But, it's like I said, Mike Tomlin, and Omar, they've left me a lot to work with. So I feel good about the direction. I'm really excited about the defense. Great seeing Alex here, because defense wins championships, and, the history of the Steelers defense and staying with the 3-4 is important, as far as the origin of it. And that's something we have to build off. I've been a head coach 18 years. I've had one top 5 defense, and we won a Super Bowl that year. So the importance of defense is critical.
Mike, Brooke Pryor, ESPN. the last three guys that had this job were in it for 19 years, 15 years, 23 years. You're a little bit more advanced in your career than they were when they took over, but how long do you see yourself continuing to coach? What do you kind of view this timeline as?
Well, I think we're going to shift the dog years, number one. So it shouldn't be funny in your first press conference. That backfired on me last time. But so, no, I think really, I mean, you know, Coach Noel, growing up in the 70s, I just, you know, when I got into coaching, you know, that's when you look at someone you like to emulate. And what Bill Kyer and Mike Tomlin have done here, trust me, I have great respect for that. But I really am. I mean, hell, I can't even get through the press conference. I'm looking forward to getting started tomorrow. And, you know, and this game is about winning, you know, and the game has changed. You know, my first year in the NFL was 1993. And you know, the rules have changed. You know, the way you train your team has changed. So those are things I'm focused on. I hope it lasts a very long time.
Mike, Teresa Varley from Steelers.com. Mike, I wanted to ask you, what was that like after you got the phone call from the Steelers to be able to call your parents and share that news with them?
See, now it's not fair, Teresa. Yes, no, it was a great phone call. I couldn't get through the introduction, so I think you know how that went. So.
Hey, Mike, Will Graves with the AP. You know, why did you still want to coach? What is it about this profession, you know, that certainly you have great credentials, you have coached a good long time. Some guys don't come back at 62. Not that that's old not as old as it used to be, but what keeps you coming back? What made you want to get back into coaching? I mean,
I love coaching. You know, I think the biggest thing is the interaction every day with the players, the coaches, the support group. I mean, to line up every single day and to work and to do hard stuff, you know, with people that are committed. I mean, there's nothing like it. And, you know, I've had a chance to step away and look at other things. There's nothing like the National Football League, and to do it at the highest level, you know, it's something that, you know, I'm not ready to walk away from, and to have this opportunity, you know, it just seemed like it was meant to be, you know, on so many different levels. But Sundays are incredible, but, you know, Tuesdays, game plan days is still one of my favorite days, you know, so there's so many little things about the coaching profession that I love. But, you know, the fact of, you know, getting up every day, grabbing that cup of coffee and hitting it, getting it, and it's all about winning. So, you know, I'm just fortunate that I had the opportunity to do it again.
Mike Pursuta, DVE. Your history is offense, your reputation's offense, your numbers support that. What has been transferable from one stop to the next? Why do you keep getting production and getting the most out of quarterbacks?
Well, I mean, you know, the quarterback opportunity, I think it's important. You know, when you become a head coach, you know, you know, a big part of why you know, got that first opportunity was, you know, the position you coached through your background and so forth. So I've been super blessed to work with unbelievable group of, you know, quarterbacks, the Hall of Famers. You know, Paul Hackett was, you know, my mentor. Paul taught me the quarterback position. You know, started at University of Pittsburgh over there in 1989. So just had great mentorship, you know, through my younger years. But in that you know, that follows through. A little harder to coach the quarterback today than it was in, you know, pre-2011. But, you know, that position is no different than any other position. You know, the quarterback position to me is a huge challenge because you don't have the individual time that the other positions have. So, but really finding time, you know, being efficient with your workload capacity and making sure those guys get the fundamental training. So just never really deviating from the old school way, and it has worked for decades.
Mike, Ashley Leotis here with WTA Channel 4 here in Pittsburgh. The playoff win drought has been a big topic of conversation here the last few years. When you look back at the last 10 years, what would you do differently? What do you think the biggest change needs to be right now moving forward into this era with you?
You know, honestly, I don't think you can really look at it that way. You know, every season's different. You know, every team you coach is a bit different. You know, your beliefs and, you know, your standards and the culture you're trying to create, you're trying to move that forward. You know, the most important thing about playoff football is staying in the playoffs. You know, we're not trying to get to the playoffs and doing the things to stay in the playoffs. Playoff footballs are the hardest games to win each and every year. I mean, if you know, earlier we talked about trends. You know, I think that, you know, the trends of the fourth quarter changes is something that, you know, I know I've been watching, the momentum shifts and so forth. Because, you know, in a lot of ways, when I look at the training of the team, especially the way the off-season programs is orchestrated, you almost have to re-engineer how you want your team to train. And what I'm talking about is you need to put more time and energy into the end of the game. Because, I mean, you look at the playoffs, because it's about winning a championship. It's not about getting to the playoffs and winning one game. It's about bringing the trophy home, and that'll always be the goal. So I think the trends of the playoff football. I think there's been one game this year that didn't come down to the last series, and the whole playoff outcome. And that trend has been in place for years. So there's not too many games in a playoff that does not come down to the 2-minute drill. And then, as I already stated, the fourth quarter momentum swings this year have been at a record pace. So that's what I pay attention to, and because we all have the same amount of time to train the team. The players, you know, have the same amount of time to put it into when we're able to work as a team. But, you know, where are you spending that time? So that's really my approach to how I would attack the playoffs.
Mike, Jeremy Scott from WESA here in Pittsburgh. There's the legend of the unopened Iron City can that was passed along from Coach Knoll to Coach Cower, then from Coach Cower to Coach Tomlin. Did you get that can?
Well, I really haven't had a chance to, you know, get to the office yet. So, but yeah, I'll let you know. So.
Mike, Mark Cabali, Steelers correspondent for the Pat McAfee Show. You've had great success over the years developing quarterbacks, but you're taking over an organization here who wants to win now. How do you balance winning now and finding that next franchise quarterback?
Well, I think you're always developing the quarterback, and been blessed to have, you know, great starters, you know, particularly, you know, the last one, the Dak Prescott, you know, Aaron and Green Bay Brett, but we've always approached it as the quarterback room, and because, you know, that second quarterback, a third quarterback, they need to emulate the starter, because that starter is dictating the rhythm and the timing and the precision with the perimeter guys. So I'm excited where I'm going with this. I'm really excited about Will Howard. You know, I think he's someone that I thought he really came on there at Ohio State. You know, I'm anxious to work with him. So, I mean, it'd be great to have Aaron back. But, you know, Will and Mason, you know, I'm really excited to get started with those guys.
Mike, Chris Adamski, Tribune Review, TribLive.com. Do you plan on calling the plays, and what's your timetable for offensive coordinator or any coaching staff? And are those going to be people that you're familiar with from your past or around the league?
Yeah, definitely. I will call the plays on offense, and so that obviously will run the offense. But, you know, these coaching staff, you know, it's a bigger challenge each and every year. And I just think there's more moving parts to it. But it's been very fluid the last 48 hours. So.
Alan Saunders from Pittsburgh Sports Now. I'd like to ask Omar and Art, a lot of the candidates you interviewed were younger coaches, defensive backgrounds. Did you come into this thinking that was maybe something you were going to do, and what was it about Mike that changed your mind maybe or stood out to you compared to some of those younger defensive guys?
You know, we came into this wanting to hire the best coach for the Pittsburgh Steelers, so we did not say, you know, we're trying to hire a young defensive coordinator or, you know, offensive guy. You know, we had an open mind about it, I think, and really just, like I said, want to make sure we found the best coach, and, you know, we were able to interview some great coaches. So I won't say it was an easy decision, but I would say at the end of the day it was an obvious decision for us that Mike was the guy for the job.
Yeah, just to echo what Art said, we were very open-minded going into this, and interviewed really an awesome group of candidates. And you know, I think Mike's resume speaks for itself. Learned a lot through the process, but we're excited Mike McCarthy's the head coach.
Missy Matthews, Steelers.com. Coach, this is for you and Omar. You guys crossed paths with the Saints many years ago. Short period of time. Is it surreal to be sitting next to each other in the capacity that you are today, and what do you remember about each other back then?
Let me go first.
Yeah, in case you say something stupid.
Yeah, it's hard to believe it. That was 25 years ago, but I grew up a big Saints fan, so for me that year was really special because that was the first year that the Saints ever won a playoff game. You know, Mike was the offensive coordinator, and it was an unbelievable year, and it was exciting, not only as someone that worked in the National Football League, but just as a fan growing up. But, you know, we had some good times, but what do I remember the most is just the hard work we put in. You know, I remember the attention to detail that this man to my right used to put into everything he did, and that still resonates with me today. But it was a good year, good experience, and can't believe it's been 25 years.
It's gone fast, and I just, you know, I always remember the first impression of Omar. You know, you get hired, and just things are going 100 mile an hour, and it was my first time being a coordinator, and Omar had worked down in the personnel department and worked with the cap, and Jim Haslett had asked if, you know, if you know, if I want him to work with us on offense, and it was awesome. I think it, you know, opened his eyes up to what coaches and players really put into it. And, you know, and I always admired, you can see right away he's going to be successful. Very bright, hardworking, and, you know, and I think we just have always been connected since then.
Hey, Mike, Jeff Hathorn with The Fan and KDKA Radio. You mentioned defense wins championships. You've got a lot of defensive guys up here. What is your defensive philosophy, and what are you looking for on that side of the ball from a coaching standpoint?
Well, I mean, as we build the staff, I mean, we definitely want to build off what's in place here. You know, I mean, just as a whole, you know, you know, with this being the third organization that I've walked into the first day, I don't believe in the throw out the baby with the bathwater method. I believe in, you know, building off what's in place, and there's a lot here in place. I mean, it's the defense is, you know, system has been here since 1992. So, you know, came here with, you know, Coach Cower and Don Capers. So, always been a fan of it. You know, always felt it was the toughest one to compete against as an offensive coach. You know, part of the reason why I went to it in Green Bay. So, you know, those are the things we're focused on right now. We're putting the staff together, but, you know, ideally we want to keep the language the same. So, I think, you know, those are big decisions when you come in here, because when you got something that works the way it's worked here for so long, I think you should try to do everything you can to build off that, if possible.
Mike, Jenna Harner, WPXI. In an interview you did in Dallas a few years back, you said family first, family and football, and you coach your team that way. What does that look like, and why is that so important to you?
Well, I think just like anything, it's how you're raised. I think it just, you know, just the basics. You know, treat people the way you want to be treated. I think respect goes a long ways, and I think it always starts with the locker room, because that locker room is a family, and everything we do, everything that we do that touches the locker room, is to me the primary focus every day. I think that's how you win. You win every day. Those men are making the sacrifices. Those guys are performers. And when they cross the white lines, you know, we got to feel that we've given them everything to be successful. So it's really keeping the light on the locker room, which is the family.
Shelby Cassasi with WPXI. What qualities are most important to you as you form your coaching staff underneath you?
Oh, I mean, a number of them. I think, you know, I have a philosophy of how to structure one. I think there's 4 areas that I've looked at. You know, number one, you got to have experts. You have men that know the league. This league evolves. You know, you definitely want to be on the front end of the cycle. You know, you want to be on the back end. So that's important to have the expertise and experience at a certain level. I think it's important to look at the current coaching staff in place. A lot of good coaches that were here in place under Mike, and you have to take that into consideration, because that's part of the fit and ability to move forward and make them part of it, you know, if you feel like it fits. And the third one is, you know, you got to look at some of the young and new ideas out there that would fit the direction that you want to go with your team. So, and then you got to have them young dudes. You know, you got to have the guys that grind. You got to have the grinders that are going to be there. And frankly, they came up the way Omar and I did. You know, we didn't have the resources back then that you have today in computers. So, you know, you slept in the office back then. You did those things. I'm not looking for that now because of the resources you do have. But so staying true to that, you know, that methodology is how I've done it. And at the end of the day, it has to fit together.
Mike DeFabo with The Athletic. Mike, you bring a reputation of offensive football. I'm curious, just how would you describe your philosophy on offense, and how has that evolved over time?
Well, I'm a believer in the tradition of the West Coast offense, and the first thing that always came to mind was the offense needs to be built to make the quarterback successful, for as simplistic as it is. And that starts with running the football. I mean, you got to run the football, because if you don't run the football and you don't, tailor your protection schemes in the action pass game to the run game, obviously it's not going to affect the defense and have the benefits of what you're looking for. So, and then, in the way the quarterback's coach in that system, you want a more athletic player in that position, the man that can extend plays and play to the rhythm, timing, spacing, and all the things that go into to an offensive system. So, but at the end of the day, you'll never hear me say this, because I would never say we run the West Coast offense. If your system of football cannot take in every player that Omar and Art want to bring to the Pittsburgh Steelers, then you need to take a look at your system. So we need to make sure we can accommodate the variety of players that are available to us.
You more?
This one's for Omar, and then a follow-up for Mike. Omar, Mike's had an extensive time working with the quarterbacks. How much did that play a factor in bringing him on to be the head coach? Because I know, you've been making it a priority to find a long-term option at quarterback. And then, Mike, how has the quarterback position evolved, and what have you learned over the time of working all the way back with Joe Montana, but then also recently with Dak Prescott?
Yeah, it's a good question. I'd say, look, with everybody we talk to, the conversation of developing the next the next quarterback for the Pittsburgh Steelers was part of it. I think Mike's resume speaks for itself, who he's been around. But we're excited about working with Will, and that was a part of it.
Quarterback play, I think the obvious is the role changes, their ability to run. They're running. The quarterback runs, the called quarterback runs is probably the biggest thing that's changed in the last 5, 6, 7 years. And obviously, the rules, protecting them and making it possible. I mean, just the way you play defense, you got a 7-gap run scheme now. It has an 8th element to it, because the quarterback can pull the ball, no different in the 8-gap, 9-gap scheme. So, I mean, I think that is the biggest evolution that I think is obvious to all of us. But at the end of the day, to win these big games that are being played, in January, they still got to make throws from the pocket, and that's why the belief and the footwork and the training and all those things, that goes into it. But yeah, the running quarterback is the biggest change that I've seen.
Hey, Mike, Brian Batko from the Post-Gazette. I just wanted to ask you, I mean, what can you share about what these last 72 hours have been like for you? How much of it's been, whether it's returning calls and texts to family and friends, or planning the next steps, draft process, pre-draft wise? What can you pull back the curtain for us on these few days?
I think the two words that jump to the front are overwhelming and surreal. The opportunity of the Pittsburgh Steelers, but the overwhelming response that's occurred. I mean, I've received probably twice as many, at least, text messages and calls that I did when we won the Super Bowl. It's been overwhelming. So, but the last 48, 72 hours have been about the staff. So, I mean, it's just been nonstop, because trying to make it fit together, and there's it's more difficult to put a staff together today than it was 6 years ago, and definitely 20 years ago. So,
2 more, and then we'll have some photo opportunities.
Mike, Ray Fittipaldo from the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. When do you need to have an answer from Aaron by? And then second part of the question is, you took this year off. What's your first thoughts on this year's quarterback class coming out of college?
That's probably a better question for Omar. Just because I'm just getting started on the draft process, and we'll dive into that, frankly, once we get past this coaching staff development. But yeah, timelines, we haven't discussed that yet.
Nick Farabaugh, Penn Live. Mike, your system has had lots of star receivers, guys like Jordy Nelson, CeeDee Lamb. As you look at the current state of your wide receivers and your weaponry, adding in the tight end and running back room, what stands out about it to you, and do you maybe need to add new types of receivers to fit what you want to do schematically?
Well, I just think, like any coach, I mean, you're supposed to look at what you have, and you look at the opportunity to develop. And as far as the receiver position as a whole, You know, we were at our best in Green Bay. The Jordy Nelson era is because all those guys work so well together. And, you know, this game's about matchups. You know, your ability to put, you know, your third receiver on the third corner, the third, and hopefully that's a favorable matchup, or move those guys around. And, you know, you want your receivers to be able to play all three positions, you know, because when you can have the flexibility of that, that goes back to the first statement about making a quarterback successful, because the quarterbacks are trained in conceptual, you know, in conceptual development of how you throw the football, so that helps you with their footwork training, because, you know, but if you got 900 plays just to beat every defense or beat every, you know, that's very difficult on a quarterback. So if you truly want to play to the rhythm and time of the quarterback, you know, your perimeter guys being able to play multiple positions is very important. So that'll be our approach with these guys, and I'm looking forward to getting started with them.
All right, thank you, guys. Give us a minute here. We're going to remove the table and do some photo opportunities.